All right, welcome UC&P TV viewers. I have the incredible Dr. Jefferson here with me today. Just a little bit about him. He is a father, husband, deacon at his church, a former superintendent, also an advocate for students. I think you also did work with like consulting at schools, former principal, former college football player, and just all things awesome. So welcome, Dr. Jefferson. It is an honor to have you with us today.
Well, thank you. And wow, you've done your homework. I see you're on top of it.
Yeah, I try to. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in, if that's okay.
That's fine.
It sounds like, just from my research on you, like your life screams leadership. So I want to know, sort of, what is your take on being a leader? What does it mean for you to be a leader?
Well, I would say, if you're talking in terms of leadership styles, I would fall in the line of more people-oriented than task-oriented. Okay. And the reason why I say that is because when you're working with, whether it's adults or when you're working with students, you have to influence behavior. And to me, that's the hardest part about being an effective leader, is influencing attitudes and behaviors. And the challenge, when you have a vision and you're trying to get people to buy into that vision, then there are some leadership things that you have to do to let them know that, okay, this is the direction that we need to go in. So you have to influence behaviors and attitudes in order to be effective.
Awesome. So it's all about sort of, I guess, getting to know people and then having them buy into whatever it is that you want the organization to become. Is that what you're saying?
Right. Because it's about building capacity, as far as relationship development and building those relationships in order to get things done. Because as a leader, what you want, if you put something in place, even if as a leader you leave, say, that school, or some of your key people leave or whatever, you still want that school to function as though you were there. Mm-hmm. And so whatever you put in place, you want it to be sustained. And by being an effective leader and understanding the importance of influencing attitudes and behavior, it gives you a lot better opportunity, to maintain and to move, that system forward.
Awesome. And I love what you said, that you want things to keep going when you leave.
Right.
A lot of people, I think, they're focused on the right now, but it sounds like your leadership style is like something that can go on and on, forever.
Well, yes, because I feel like my style is more transformational. And that's what comes out of that, is that it's sustained and you have sort of changed attitudes and behavior. And therefore, if you leave, things continue on.
Wow. I love that. So have you always known that you were a leader? Is it something that you realized sort of later on when you got into a specific position?
Yeah, I think it kind of grew with me as I developed, as an individual. When I initially started out in education, I started out as an athletic coach. I was teaching physical education and also teaching world history. And all of the places that I would go as far as moving up the ladder as a coach and a teacher, either a principal or superintendents would say to me, man, you're really good with young people. You work well with students. Have you ever thought about being a principal? And my thing was, nah, I just want to coach. I just want to do athletics. I don't want anything to do with administration. Yeah. And I heard that for like the next 3 or 4 jobs. And so I finally, when I got to Enterprise, Alabama, I said, and the superintendent said, man, so you're really good with students. Why don't you take a few courses? And I said, well, I really don't want to be an administrator. He said, well, you have so many leadership qualities. Yeah. And I took a couple of courses and the bug hit me, and, I guess the rest is history.
Yes. So are there like specific skills that, just specifically in education, are there specific skills that a teacher exemplifies before they can become an administrator or a leader?
Well, if you note earlier, I used the word effective, being an effective leader. And to me, there are some component parts that you have to have. First of all, you have to be affable. I mean, when it comes to just being cordial and sociable, people have to kind of gravitate, toward you. And then you have to be assiduous. I mean, just very diligent and persistent and industrious, in your ideas and so forth. And then the last part of that will be altruistic. You have to have a concern for the welfare of others. And if you can do those three things, and you can be effective in doing those things, you're going to be an effective leader.
Wow. I love that distinction between a leader and an effective leader, because we all know that education and experiences, all of a sudden you can be in a leadership position, but it does not mean that you're going to be an effective, change-making leader that has sustainable leadership skills. So great. Thank you so much for sharing that. So you talked about how, you were coaching football, and I know that you were also a former football player in college, and I'm sure probably previously. What advice do you have for people? Because a lot of people, especially people who go on to play sports in the college setting, a lot of people have aspirations to play at a professional setting. So what advice do you have for someone who maybe has just realized that it's not happening for them and they don't know where to go, or for someone that, that is their only aspiration? What advice do you have for people in that situation?
That is an excellent question, and I'm so happy that you asked that, because this is what I think is tremendously important. And I can share a little bit of my own personal story. When I left Selma in 1975 to go to Livingston University, which is now the University of West Alabama, my goal was to play professionally. I mean, that was my goal. Not thinking of all the nuances that come with that and all of what you have to do. And I was very effective my freshman year, had a really good year, played on probably the best team in the history of West Alabama. The team I played in on my freshman year, because we beat the #1 ranked team in the country in the first round of the playoff, North Dakota State, and then we lost 28-26 to the eventual champion in the semifinal round, Northern Michigan. And then I came back my sophomore year, and I made all conference, and things were really, really looking well. Looking up for me, was getting some interest from the NFL teams and so forth. But then in the spring leading into my junior year, I had knee surgery. I had a bad injury and injured my knee, and never really quite gained my speed back to what it was before the injury. And I ended up transferring from Livingston after my junior year to Alabama State. So actually, I'm a graduate of Alabama State. But the point I want to make here is I had put all of my eggs in one basket in playing professional football, because I really wanted to come back to Selma and do some special things here in town. And I was excited. But then the injury just kind of changed all of that. And so my focus then was, okay, well, I need to do the very best I can academically, because if this football thing doesn't work out, I still gotta, I gotta make a living. And I came from a very large family, 9 of us. I was in the middle, 4 older and 4 younger, experienced the demise of my mother at age 11. My father had a 3rd grade education and worked in a junkyard. And so I wanted more for myself and my family. So I knew that education was going to be the vehicle to do that for me. No longer athletics. It didn't have the pie in the sky attitude anymore. It then became, I had to change, my priorities and understand that, okay, I still can be successful, but athletics may not be to the extent that I'm playing in the NFL.
Okay. Thank you so much for answering that question, because, even myself as an educator, I see that with students. And sometimes it's difficult to kind of communicate that to them without having the personal experience myself. So thank you for sharing that.
Everybody have it. It's young ladies as well as guys, have that feeling, well, I want to play in the WNBA, or I want
Right.
to play in the NBA, I want to play in the NFL, I want
Sure.
to play professionally, but they don't understand that a lot of things have to happen for you in order to get that opportunity, because it's only like 1% of the kids that play college football actually get an opportunity to play in the NFL. So
Right.
you better do something, learn to do something else.
Right. Not put all of those eggs in one basket. It's okay to have dreams.
Right.
Sounds like that's what you're saying, but you don't
Right.
the center on one, and then be flexible, right? Be willing to
Exactly.
change.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. So that kind of answers my question that I had about how you transition from sports to leadership and education. But I want to know if there are any specific skills that you took from being an athlete, just some practical skills that you took that you apply even now.
Yeah. Well, first of all, athletics or sports, in a sense, is a microcosm of society. Mm-hmm. And at an early age, I understood that, there are rules and regulations when you get on that football field. The field is 100-yard long, 52 yards wide. But there are boundaries, that you've got to fit within those boundaries in order to be successful. In life, it's the same way. There are times when you're going to, as they say, get thrown a curveball, or life is going to knock you down. But you got to get back up. You can't stay down. And I think that's the thing that I learned early on with athletics is to stay with it, regardless of how tough it gets, whatever. If I stay with it, it's a good chance I'm going to be successful. And I was able to transfer that over into, my professional life as I became an educator.
Right. That is so helpful. Again, it goes back to, people who maybe that's their only dream. And then you realize that this is not going to happen, and a lot of people are stuck. Like, what are my skills? What can I do? All I know is football. All I know is basketball. But I'm glad that you made that practical. And you can take those things and literally apply them.
Right.
Whichever.
And there were things like, discipline certainly was a big part of being successful. Mm-hmm. And then understanding that, you're not born with a long hand and a short hand like a watch, so time shouldn't ever be a reason why you're not successful. Burn the midnight oil. You stay up as long as you need to in order for you to get whatever it is that you're trying to get. But athletics teaches you that, and again, sometimes you're going to get knocked down, but, don't stay down, get up. Every time you get knocked down, you have to show resiliency and get back up.
Awesome. Absolutely. So what motivates you to keep going? And I know that changes at different times. And right now we're in a weird time. So that might be even more different now. But what is your motivation to keep going?
Well, it's interesting that you should say that because when I was coming through college and trying to make my way and even early on in my profession, my attitude was that I was just going to do the very best with what God had given me, and to make sure, that I'm successful. I had to apply myself, whether it was academically or athletically, and understanding that there are going to be some tough situations, but life is just that way. There are situations that are in your control, and there are situations that are not in your control. And if you are an individual with, I would say, just an ounce of salt in your body, you want to do all you can to be successful. And that was me. It was. I guess you can say it was fear of failure. I guess, more than anything that drove me, that motivated me, because, as I said, I wanted to come back to Selma to make a difference. I just thought that the vehicle that I was going to be riding and coming back was going to be through athletics, but it actually was through academics.
Wow. And it kind of shows the genuine nature of your desire to come back and make a difference, because you did not let the method or the vehicle, you didn't let that determine your intentions. Like, you came back and just kind of what we were talking about, the things that you've done earlier, like consistently made changes in all of the roles that you've been in. So I love
Yeah.
that, and that's something that I
And,
want to encourage other people to do, like have a genuine desire and
yeah.
a genuine interest in what you're
And I
pursuing.
think, and I think part of my attitude was that, uh, again, experiencing the demise of my mother at an early age, I had to depend a lot on my teachers in school, my coaches, my church members, people that in the community in general. And a lot of people went out of their way to assist and help me once they saw I was driven, to be successful. And to me, that was my way of giving back, coming back and trying to make a difference in the community. When I grew up in the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s here in Selma, Alabama, during the Jim Crow South. And I can assure you, for everybody, it was tough, specifically for African Americans, because it was almost as though we were second-class citizens in our own country. And with the civil rights movement and kind of understanding a little bit about who I am as an individual and what I needed to do. So much of that depended on people seeing something in me and assisting me. So therefore it was on me to give something back.
Wow, that is so impactful. Just speaking about the time that you grew up in and then thinking about where we are now, I'm assuming that you see a lot of similarities between those time periods. What is your response to people who are struggling with, something that's been happening for a long period of time, but maybe because of the news, they're just seeing it, or it's just becoming apparent that things like racism, discrimination, that they are real? What is your advice to people who are having a hard time with coping or adjusting or figuring out, where they fit in this?
I think the one thing I would say is just stay in the course. A lot of times when there's trepidation or when there's chaos, a lot of times when you don't know who you are and where you want to go and how you're going to get there, you have a tendency to relax and just accept anything. And that wasn't my attitude. My attitude was that, okay, I am somebody. I have value. I have expectations for myself. And with that, I'm going to do the very best with what I have. If I do that, I'll go far. And that was kind of, it's kind of a little Booker T. Washington, catch down your bucket where you are. And so to make the most of it, because as I said, back in the 50s and 60s, as African American, none of us really had, all of the financial means or, all of the exquisite things and so forth and so on. It was a grind for everybody. I mean, we didn't know we were poor. As I said, my father worked in a junkyard making, 40 cents an hour. I mean, but, he still was able to raise and feed 9 children. And to me, that's a sacrifice.
Wow, absolutely. I mean, I think that these types of stories need to be told over and over again. I think a lot of people think that they're grinding, but, not like that, not in the way that you're describing, and I think we need to make sure that, this generation and generations that come after us are aware of what it really takes to succeed. It's not
and that's what makes you, who you are in a sense, to have those setbacks and not allow them to affect you to the point where, you're not successful. And you take those negatives and turn them into something positive. And if you can do that, then, chances are you're going to be successful.
Absolutely. So now you may have already stated some of them, but if you could pick just one, what is your favorite quote that you live by? Something that you would encourage everybody to maybe say to themselves when they're experiencing some challenging times?
Well, my favorite quote probably comes from Carter G. Woodson. Okay. And, Carter G. Woodson really was a person that, that kind of founded, Black History Month, where it actually started out as Black History Week, and then they increased it to Black History Month, but he's the father of African American history. And he wrote a book called The Miseducation of the Negro. And in this book, he said, if you can control a man's thinking, you don't have to worry about his action. When you determine what it is a man should think, you don't have to concern yourself about what he'll do. If a man thinks that he's inferior, you don't have to force him to accept an inferior status, for he was seeking himself. If a man thinks that he's just an outcast, you don't have to order him to the back door, for he would go without being told. And if there's no back door, his very nature what the man wants. And if I can just kind of explain that a little bit,
Yes,
because I think it's tremendously important. You know, so oftentimes in life, we allow ourselves to be controlled by circumstances or situations and so forth and so on. And just using this as an example, say for instance, if you drop out of school at, you know, say in 5th or 6th grade, 7th, 8th grade or whatever, well, in a sense, somebody is probably going to be controlling you a lot because you don't have the requisite skills in order to go out there and make it. And if you yourself can't see within yourself how it's important not to be restrained and not to allow yourself to obsequiously, you know, be kind of confined to somebody else's beliefs and values and what you should be and what you should do. If you get a quality education, I don't care how many doors are before you, you're going to have the key to unlock any door. But if you don't get a quality education, the chances are somebody else is going to be controlling everything that you do. And based on the quote from Carter G. Woodson, and when they do, and everything kind of hits you in the face, instead of you facing it head on and saying, I know I can figure this out, you find a hole to crawl into, or you find a back door in which to exit the building. And that quote to me means that as a young man, I needed to do everything I possibly could to get a quality education, because I don't want anybody controlling me and telling me when to get up, when to go to sleep. I got to do this, you know, you got to do that or whatever. I want to think for myself. And in order to do that, I knew I had to get a quality education.
wow.
I know that's kind of long. I know it's kind of long.
That was important. Thank you so much for that. Wow. And I really think that, you know, people forget the importance of an education because they hear so many avenues without realizing that to get to those avenues, you still need some form of an education. And so I'm so glad that you mentioned, you know, the power of an education. And not only do you talk about it, you live it. You do your best to make sure that
and that was one of the things that I always share with my students, you know, about that quote and how important it is to get a quality education.
Yes.
Because if you want to unlock those doors, education for us African Americans is key. Because see, our parents didn't leave us millions and millions of dollars and, you know, a restaurant or a hotel chain or whatever. I mean, when my father passed away, I mean, you know, he didn't have anything to leave. I mean, so education has got to be the key for us in order to, you know, to fortify the livelihood that we want to have.
Absolutely. Well, I definitely want to close on that note that education is key. I love it. Thank you so much, Dr. Jefferson.
Thank you.
For your time, for all of your wisdom and everything that you do for the community and beyond. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me, and I really appreciated having the opportunity to be with you today.
Absolutely, absolutely. UC&P TV viewers, thank you for watching, and I hope that you'll tune in to our next video. Bye-bye.
Thank you.